Okay, Restless Oblivion says he likes to make characters say something straightforward and then have the truth of the situation contradict the character's assessment. For example, Yen says her portals are safe, and then Geralt thinks about the time he saw only half a man emerge from a safe portal.
Yeah.
Or Cranmer talks about the scars and says that Tylus is pleased while he's lying on the ground bleeding from his face, moaning and crying.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yep.
It's almost like a polar opposite view, and that,
Well,
that's comedy in its in the sense of what comedy has been referred to like hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, it's a way that he is good, I feel, at sort of like again creating a sense of contrast in the writing, even though a lot of this is not action heavy and it's a lot of dialogue and it's a lot of just like characters bantering back and forth. It's a good way of sort of just like this push and pull sort of like motion with the way he's like revealing information. You're thinking that this is it, and then nope, like it's this, and then nope, and so it keeps it interesting, and you're kind of like, oh wow, like it's moving, and it stays engaging without having to have like tons of action or something like that. Like he can keep his dialogue and just his exposition really interesting in that way. I think that leads to how he's able to do that to some degree.
What did you think about the whole, like, somebody lists two things, and then only in this chapter, he never did it before that, but in this chapter, then he goes, but we never got to know what the third thing was, because
he repeated that
like
several
6 or
times,
7 times. It just keeps, but he never did that before. And at first I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then he kept doing it. And I was like, this is a joke. This is his idea of a recurring joke.
It's supposed to be funny, right?
But he never did it before. But it wasn't that funny at first, but it became funny by the end, because it was like, what's he doing? And it's not the kind of thing that he carried out throughout the whole book. It was just that one story.
No one ever found out what the troubadour thought. Yeah, I liked it too. And gets us kind of what I spoke about last week. By the way, we're gonna just kind of roll into this now. We've had people, we've given people enough time to get in here, but kind of it spins off a little bit of what I was talking about last week, where in the first 3 or 4-ish chapters, there was some semblance of humor, but mostly it was pretty serious, and some of it was really heavy, especially the Butcher of Blaviken story. There was some kind of intense stuff there. The way he describes the fight with the vampire in chapter 2, with the blood blooming through her back, she's like freaking staked. Some intense stuff, right? And then as soon as Dandelion gets introduced, like, we start to have this really good balance of like humor and then like action, and it becomes more of a classic adventure story kind of feel versus like a darker fantasy gritty kind of world. And what's interesting about it, like you're saying, you know, he adopted a certain style of writing for this chapter that was different from the others, and it brings to mind the fact that these were all written separately. So this wasn't written as like a single novel. Right. He was writing these as short stories and submitting them to publications and stuff like that, and people were sort of like following him. And then he wrote the Voice of Reason to sort of like tie them all into one, and then released it as a single volume. So it makes sense to me. Well, a number of things. One, his writing from just a technical standpoint really improves from 1 to 5. Like in 1, it's like, it's good. It's not like the best prose I've ever read. Sometimes it's a little bland, and you know, he falls into, as you know, dialogue and things like that to give his exposition, but his subtlety and his wit and just like the quality of the prose itself just gets stronger and stronger and stronger as you move through it. And that, I think, leads to, I mean, it is a sign of his improving as he was sort of like really getting into this and fleshing the story out. Restless Oblivion says, I wonder if Dandelion was created as a result of feedback from readers and editors. That's a possibility.
It's possible. My personal opinion, I don't like him at all.
You don't like Dandelion?
No, he causes problems. Like
Yeah.
he's rash. He is an idiot. But it is kind of cool at varying parts of the story, especially at the end of this chapter we just read, where Geralt is saying things like, if there's any way that I could save him, I would give my life for him. And so there are obviously hints towards like a deeper connection between the two, but all that we ever really see of them two, honestly, is like kind of just ridiculous stuff that Dandelion just like makes worse by his, rhetorical comments and stuff.
Yeah. Rob, real quick, says, so all these stories are set before he became famous. I think that they were what made him famous. So he actually got a lot of recognition for the first chapter, because I think he got like 3rd place in the competition that he submitted that first story to, but everyone followed him from that. Like all the readers were all about, hey, do more Geralt stories. That was awesome. And so, like, despite the fact that he didn't win that competition, like, he got the most recognition and the most followers from submitting that story. And so I think that whether he was famous or not, I can't say, but, I mean, as these stories released, he was gaining more and more and more of a following. So I'm sure that he probably did, respond to some criticism with some of the choices he made. But it is interesting to me that this really nice... See, I understand people who don't like Dandelion, because he is an annoying character. And like he becomes more and more so as the story goes on. And you see Geralt almost sort of like just become perpetually frustrated with him. And by the time you get to the video games, it's just like everyone's just like, shut up, Dandelion, like be quiet, like go away. Like they are all just very, very dismissive of him.
But I did find it telling at that point where he's trying to save his friend's life, and he's going throughout the city and he goes up to the sorceress and he's like, hey, or, he's just trying to do whatever he can, forcing his way into this house and like, we have to get there now. And why do you care about him so much? Oh, I would, I'd do anything for him. And I just like, he says it, but we don't really see where's that connection.
So in the last chapter, pretty much all they had really alluded to was that, first of all, I mean, we have had a really strong sense that Geralt is very isolated and feels very alone in the world, right? Also, he is cold and generally very neutral, even sometimes unfeeling, like rough around the edges kind of character, a closet philosopher, as some people have brought up, and doesn't have a lot of levity in his life, right? And so I think he used the phrase, opposites attract in chapter 4, I think it was. But I think that especially being a younger character at this time, just the sense that this person accepts him and like has some of the qualities that maybe he wishes he had in himself, the ability to loosen up, the ability to have fun to some degree. I think that he finds Dandelion a fascinating person in that regard. And Dandelion's one of the few people in this entire world that will actually like give him the time of day, that will like spend any time with him at all.
That's actually a very good point. Yeah.
So I love the dynamic between them because they are total opposites.
Yeah.
And that creates good opportunities for humor. You have even just the beginning of this scene, they're fishing, and Dandelion's insisting on pulling on the line, and he's like, "No, but that kind of dynamic between them, they're kind of bantering and arguing and butting heads, like, despite the fact that Geralt knows he can be stupid, like, I think his need for some level of companionship sort of just like drives him to like stick around with this guy and help him out, because Dandelion at his heart is a really good person. He's a womanizer, and he's got a lot of vices, and he is not the smartest dude. He's educated, but he's not necessarily, he doesn't have a lot of common sense. And so I don't know. I love the dynamic between them, and it does, as Rob wrote up here towards the top of the discussion. He said it was a lot of fun with some laugh out loud moments, and that sort of like sense of like adventure and fun kind of adventure, like the Indiana Jones type of fun
with
adventure.
His, what's his name? The guy that is with him. Is it John Rhys Davies' character? Remember
yes.
no, maybe it wasn't him. John Rhys Davies is in it. He might be that character. But in The Last Crusade, when Indiana Jones is like, "Oh, good luck. This guy, he knows a dozen languages. He's traveled the world. He's as educated as you can get. With any luck, he's already there." And then they show him, and he's walking around with the map.
It's that other old dude.
Speak English.
It's that other old guy. I forget his name.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was.
Anyways, yes,
it's kind of like that, and
feel.
in that sense, I can appreciate it a little more.
Yeah, and like this chapter in particular, like any time something started to get heavy, they would have, even if it's not with Dandelion, there would be some other like funny, like when Yennefer and Geralt are fighting. When he tries to save her from the djinn, and they go through her portal, and they land in the middle of that basically like ball or like some kind of event for nobles, right? And the guy's just like, "Excuse me, sir, do you have an invitation?" And they're like screaming profanities at him.
Yeah.
And
Piss
so
off.
like all of that, he's just like constantly has this nice flow of balance between humor and then like something intense and humor and something intense. And that was my favorite part, I think, of both this chapter and the last one to a large degree. The last one got a little bit more serious, a little more philosophical when it was talking about the elves, like losing their way of life and things like that. But this one was a lot more just like upbeat and fun and intense, and I don't know, just a tone to it that I really, really enjoyed. But the really important introduction here is Yennefer of Vengerberg. Incredibly important character, and one of the romanceable characters from The Witcher 3, but from the Witcher video games, a very important character that comes into the video games. So this is where she's first introduced. We learn a lot about kind of like the world, the background of the world through her a little bit, like sorceresses and like how they're selected. His sort of take on just like people who become sorcerers and sorceresses being people who couldn't be married off into alliances and things like that in the real world because they're ugly kids or have disabilities to some degree or whatever, but they show an aptitude, a natural aptitude for magic, and so they basically give themselves to the order. And how she actually has atrophied, like her organs have atrophied, so she cannot reproduce. And so she's, at the Temple of Melitula asking for some kind of cure. You get a lot of tension between, and this is I think my favorite thing about Yennefer and Geralt. And one of the things that people ask me when I talk about, the games and these stories, they say, who do you like, Triss or Yennefer? Which character for Geralt as a romanceable character do you like better? And I don't want to say too much in fear of spoiling Triss later on, who will meet in Blood of Elves for the first time, I believe. And I don't want to spoil too much about some of the side quests and stories that happen in the video games later. But Yennefer and Geralt have a connection that I feel is so believable as we'll go on. You see in the Voice of Reason chapter how angry they are at each other. Despite the fact that, as we learn in the story, there is literally a spell. They are spellbound to, be in love. The genie has basically, tied their fates together, and they cannot avoid the fact that they have powerful yearnings for one another. Yet still, they are at this place in the Voice of Reason portion of the chapter where they have been separated for a long time. They can't even be in the same room together. They're incredibly angry. Like, there's this really believable, I think, sort of relationship between them where they're on again and off again. In a lot of stories where there's a romantic element to it, like a side story, or even if it's just it's like a romantic comedy or romantic drama or whatever it is. I think that you very rarely get, and maybe this is just me and the relationships that I've been in, but like, it is really, really hard to communicate and understand another person, and it's so easy to, when you're in a romantic relationship with someone, like more so than any other kind. I get along really well with most of my family members and my friends, and very rarely now and then I've had an issue with somebody that it's like, oh, we're mad at each other for right now, but usually you resolve that fairly quickly. It's not, I don't have this like constant struggle to like where you emotionally get so invested that little thing they say will drive you crazy, and you get really mad about little things, right? And I think that portion of a romantic relationship is captured so well between Geralt and Yennefer throughout this series. It's one of my favorite like relationships in fiction that I've ever seen, because I feel that they really capture in such a real way how when two, in some ways, very opposite people, and in most of the relationships I've been in, I've been with kind of opposites of myself in a lot of ways, because opposites do attract. I mean, there's truth to that.
Sure.
And so to see like the real tension between people and how that can last for months and months and months sometimes, where you're just like, I just don't, like, I love you, but like I feel there's there's something different in the relationship right now, and then you work through that after time, and then it's like you get through that, and it's like, wow, like I actually appreciate you so much more now because like we worked through that hardship together. You know, I don't want to go on that for too long, but
there's a common like truth to that, I think, of most important relationships.
Yeah. And so the beginnings of that are really sown here. And there'll be a lot more to come later, but I really liked, and I think the reason why people ask this, because a lot of people don't like Yennefer. I don't know what you thought of her or what people in the chat thought of her. A lot of people don't like her, and for
like,
good reason.
I didn't like her. I mean, I feel like that's how she was written. She wasn't written to be liked or likable.
Yes, it's true.
She was written for you to look at it and be like, well, here's an opportunist. If you ever saw one.
Absolutely.
I mean, by the end of it, it's like, to me, it just came out of left field, and I was like, how does that even make sense? But anyways, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about Yennefer.
Well, let's talk about that then. Like, what did you have a hard time accepting?
She starts off, she's like incredibly powerful, right? She's a lot more powerful than Geralt, at least in that she's what do you call it? She's secretive, right? So like she cast that spell on him without him even knowing it, right? So his defenses were down. Arguably, she wouldn't have really been able to do that were he not, enveloped in his own thoughts and trying to impress her with words. And that wouldn't have happened in a straight up battle. Who knows what would happen? But she seems to me to be unbelievably powerful, right, along the lines of the wizard from a few chapters ago, and capable of doing stuff that is hard to even imagine. And then she doesn't. I don't like. It doesn't seem like she really likes Geralt in any real way. There was a scene or two where she seems like interested, like she finds him fascinating in one way or another. Then you find out that with her talking. But then at the very end, she just becomes this complete soft, like less than all-powerful person that she was not that person before, and now all of a sudden she is this new different person who's very sweet and very soft and very gentle and very kind, and it's like what, who am I don't know. It's just not the character they introduced, and it's not the character whose motivations I had believed up until that point. Just kind of, I found that interesting.
So here's my thoughts on her, right? Like they explain how these really ugly girls, they explain her, I mean, essentially as a hunchback, like a deformed person, right? Who would have borne the scorn of everyone around them their entire lives, right? A person like that, chip on their shoulder, probably a strong hatred for and mistrust of a lot of people, comes to realize how much power they really have. And they can put up the illusion that they are this strong, beautiful, like, just person to be reckoned with, power to be reckoned with, force to be reckoned with. That's what I'm looking for. Like, how that person would completely seize on that opportunity.
Right.
And how
you're saying that's almost part of her illusion.
Yes.
Part of the illusion of who she appears to be is part of her persona that she puts forward that's not who she really is. That is actually really profound.
So not only that, right, just from the history and just like the years, but just the justification that can come from treating people that way, because that's how she was treated her entire childhood and adolescence. You know what I mean? Like this lack of ability to trust anybody else is going to lead to you justifying cheating and lying and deceiving and stepping all over people to get what you want in life. And she mentions that a couple times. I always get what I want, right? Like it's very important to her that she gets what she wants. And I can see that being a very believable motivation for a character who comes from being literally deformed and sent away by her parents, scorned, not loved, whatever, to go and train in under pretty rough conditions. I mean, it's not easy what they go through to become sorceresses and stuff. And when she gains the power that she wants, she's like, I'm going to seize this opportunity to pay the world back. You know, that kind of like chip on the shoulder makes perfect sense to me.
Sure.
But if you can dig underneath all of that, you'll find what Geralt saw, which is a wounded, disfigured, sad, pathetic sort of character underneath that. And he was so afraid of her knowing that he saw that, that he was like, nope, gotta get rid of that. I don't want her to ever know that I've seen her for who she really is underneath, like the skin deep level, because she would hate me for it. Because she wants to appear strong. She wants to appear powerful and condescending and everything like that. And she's become that of years and years and years of living this way. But I think that there is something deeper underneath. And the fact that she switches on the dime like that is all to do with the spell of the genie, right? Because, okay, so we've got to talk about the genie. So, Dandelion's fishing and pulls out the freaking, like, I don't know what it is. It's basically genie in a lamp scenario, right?
Yeah.
And everyone thinks that he's the one that released it and he's the one that started making the wishes. Turn that on its head. It's actually Geralt the whole time who is the master of the genie. That was kind of like the bait and switch later on, and he was the one that had to make the final wish in order to free the genie or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, so she manipulates him. Actually, this is one thing I did almost make a note about. And this is something I think Sapkowski's so good at, right? You have her sort of when she traps him, right? Because I thought they did a really good setup to that. She threw a spell at him, he deflected the spell, and she was surprised by it. She was like, holy crap, you actually like deflected my spell. That got her attention. And so she made a point to observe him and the fact that he wants to come off as this eloquent, philosophizing, smart and witty person, and she saw that weakness in him, that need to be seen that way, and sort of used that when she then trapped him, right? Yeah. But she traps him, and then she starts explaining away, like, essentially her justification of screwing him over. And what I love so much is that he does such a good job at making you think, like, okay, I see where you're coming from. But then you go, wait a minute, no. Because she's like, you sat there and had, like, the audacity to think that you could go toe-to-toe with me while you're sitting there watching me bathe, essentially, right? Like, and you go, like, yeah, I guess he deserved that. That was a shot well done. But no! She invited him there in the first place. She insisted. That was
her...
Right? Because he was choice, she was like, Lady Yennefer, we don't have time for this. My friend's
and she's like, don't look
severely
away.
injured.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, go down to my bath cellar and we're going to talk about this. So she said, anyways, but I can see.
And then he wanted to turn away, but she's like, no, you have to look at me. I have to see your eyes.
Yeah. Right.
And
so
he's like, okay. So then she uses that against him. It's ridiculous.
The manipulation of it, I think, was so real, because that's what manipulative people do. They set this up and they build this case to try and, like, make you feel bad for what you did. And on the surface of it might seem like they're right for saying that, but then it's like, no. Maybe they don't even realize they've become so manipulative that it's just like their nature, that they just, like, set up situations so that they can just, like, mess you up. Anyways, I really liked that dynamic to her. And she is very scheming, and there's good reason not to like her. But I do think, again, that the setup, that what he saw in her, the real her, is a good justification, for lack of a better word, a writing justification for how these characters are going to, for so long, tolerate, try to, like, move past their issues, and that sort of thing. So, anyways, we'll talk more about their relationship much, much later. But anyways, she wants to trap the genie. In order to do that, it's got to be released from its master. They all think it's Dandelion. So she's trying to get Dandelion to make his last wish, which is she sent him out, like, mind-controlled him to go, like, beat up all of her enemies in the town. That was
so funny. This was a really funny chapter. Like, for all of the weird stuff and the dark things that were going on, like, this was it was really funny. He was, like, spanking people in public.
Yeah. Defending her virtue and stuff like that. Restless Oblivion says Entrapment, starring Yennefer of Vengerberg. That's exactly right.
Entrapment, yeah.
Anyways, so it's not until he almost, like, accidentally wishes that the guy beating him in the jail, like, it blows up, like, implodes. And then that happens where you start to go, like, oh, Geralt's the one who's making the wishes here, and they're coming, like, like, something's different. And then Dandelion comes flying in. I wish that you believe he's innocent, and he's, like, singing it in his, like, tenor or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, like, so many fun, hilarious moments like that.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, the repetition of the use of someone's going on and on about, like, this and that, and it's like no one ever found out what that person was going to do next, because in that moment, like, bam, like, this thing happens. But she thinks that Dandelion has made his final wish, so now she thinks, oh, I can trap him. But she can't trap the djinn because he's not actually released yet. And that's why she's struggling so hard. So as powerful as she is, the reason she can't trap that djinn, I mean, it's a powerful djinn, but the real reason is because it's still bound to its master, who is Geralt at the time, who still has one wish left. Which is why when he goes over there to help her, and the djinn comes as if it's going to attack her, and he gets in the way, it stops and doesn't attack. And it's sort of like, almost like, makes a demand of him. Like, make your wish. Oh, and then also the incantation that Geralt...
Yes, the first wish. Like, go F yourself.
I wish you would go F yourself, right? It's so funny that inadvertently that's his first wish, and the djinn did it. Like, the djinn had to leave because he was making a wish in that language. But it was essentially like a super profane thing. He didn't even know what he was saying. Anyways,
Yeah,
just
that
such
was funny.
good like setups
really
and payoffs
funny.
to that.
Yeah.
But anyways, he realizes Yennefer is in a bad spot because the djinn it's a vengeful being. So as soon as he makes his last wish and he's no longer bound to it, before it leaves to go back to its plane of existence, it would take its vengeance on Yennefer.
Right.
So his wish in the end is to essentially bind his fate to hers, so that the djinn will be forced to respect the wish and not kill her. And that takes the form of the two of them essentially having like a love spell placed over them, right? So her pining over him and becoming softer toward him, I think, is all the result of this spell that they are now under, right? And this is going to play a huge role into how they feel about each other, because it's like, do we really love each other when we're together? Sometimes it's so, like, yes, we feel that that's true, but we can never really know if it's us, if it's real, or if it's just this wish of the genie that you made, and if it's all just like basically fake and it's all because of the spell. But overall, just a really good chapter, really good balance, really good dialogue, really witty ideas that are paid off really well and paced really well. The action's good. I loved the mayor of the town. What does he say? He's I think that his priest guy was saying something about justice, right? He was like explaining how this is justice for Yennefer to basically have like this genie's gonna rip her apart or whatever.
Right.
And he was like, I shit on justice, like he's ruining the town. He's just like
Oh, but then there's that other guy who comes up
out.
and he goes, oh, that's my building that's being destroyed. And the guy's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And he goes, no, it's okay. I took out an insurance policy.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy goes,
is
oh,
like,
well, congratulations.
He's like, did you get it covered for magical anomalies and that sort of thing? He's like, yes, sure, I did. He was like, that was wise. Congratulations.
So many parts of this chapter
amazing,
were really funny.
Amazing. Anyways, that's about all I have to say about it. It's a great like sort of final send off, and then of course we go back to the voice of reason, where Tyless comes back to challenge Geralt. And he, again, sort of finds a way around the problem, right? Because it's like, you can't harm him, otherwise we'll punish you. But you also have to accept the challenge, because a knight is, like, coming down to your level, so, like, you have to accept this, otherwise we'll hang you, basically.
And there's some, like, dwarf who was the judge or something?
Yeah,
like that?
He was the captain, I think, of this particular... I don't know what you'd call it, brigade. Anyways, so he's there to carry out the orders by the letter, to the letter, right? So, like, I like that as a setup already, because it's like, according technically to the letter of what I was assigned to do, like, this fulfills it, and we can go. But the fact that Geralt finds a way around it, he didn't actually harm him himself. He hits his sword back into his own face, so technically he mars himself with his own sword so that he can not have to take the disgrace of letting this guy beat him up. Anyways, just really clever, really clever writer and storyteller. I really like Sapkowski a lot.
That was smart.
As a writer.
After I finished the book, I looked up the Wikipedia entry, and I found something really interesting. There is a TV show called The Hexer. You ever heard of it?
No, I have not.
I don't even know if it's English or what. But hold on. The Last Wish. I have to show you this. This is really interesting. There's a TV show that took a ton of these stories from this book and adapted it to like a show. I don't know if it's a Polish show or...
I think it is. That's what Restless Oblivion is saying, yeah.
Yeah, The Hexer. So it's a Polish show. Yeah, I was going to click... Okay, I see it. Yeah, it's written in a not Roman alphabet. Yeah, 13 episodes, and it seems to be like... they're saying this is the first film attempt to depict the Witcher universe in cinema.
Mm-hmm. I think that there's a Polish show. It's not supposed to be very good. very low
Yeah, it's from
budget.
2001.
But yeah, they had a little short sort of season of episodes on The Witcher. Let's see. Restless Oblivion says, my favorite line, when you spoke of him, you omitted his title and threw in other descriptions to the delight of the children trailing after you. So these kids were like going through the streets as he's going around beating people up and like...
They thought it was
it's
so
like a
fun.
whole... Yeah, like the whole town is like all into it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, and then the very final thing that happens, right, with Yola, sort of like seeing his future, and he's continually like, I don't want to know my future. Like, I know I'm gonna freaking die in some horrible way, but I don't want to know when it's gonna happen. Just like, I don't want to look over my shoulder constantly. You know, that's why he kept resisting it. But I think a good way to leave us on a bit of a cliffhanger, as to and that hints at like what the larger the larger saga is sort of like what we're building towards. But that all has to do with what happened in chapter 4 when he was in Sintra, and he sort of like, you know, the child surprise and the whole like laws of how that works, and now he has to go back to Sintra, or he at least was promised that he'd go back, and because of how he helped Dooney or whatever. So essentially what he asked for is that their daughter, who Pavetta was pregnant with at the time, he would take that child away and train it to be a Witcher, to pass on their knowledge and their skills and their everything, because there are not very many Witchers left. So anyways, that's all set up for what's coming later. But I really love this book. Every time I read it, I mean, it's just, he's so clever, and I love his prose, his style of writing. And I love how diverse he is, and like how much he can sort of like change tone from one story to the next and keep it all self-contained, and it works. And some of them are literally laugh out loud hilarious, and some of them are really like, ooh, it makes you think, kind of on a deeper level. Shaglarab says, but she has to agree to it herself. Yes, yes, that is the way that the law works. So the child has to agree.
But isn't it from the time the child's like 4 years old or something?
I don't remember the exact technical...
I thought it was like a really young age.
They do have to be... I don't know. I have to look into that. But in any case, we're done.
Yeah, I like it too, man. Book's cool. I'm excited to read the next one.
So let's talk about the next book we'll be reading on Book Club. It is this book here, Mistborn. And it is the first of the Mistborn series. The title is The Final Empire. For those of you who haven't had a chance to get it yet, just want to make sure you all know which one, because I was a little bit confused, because there's a bunch of Mistborn books. But The Final Empire is the first of a trilogy, essentially, of fantasy novels. And then the plan, or from what I'm hearing from Rob and others, is that there's a more of like a contemporary setting for a trilogy in the same world. So it's like going into like a modern age, and then there's supposed to be like a science fiction trilogy after that, all containing the same like rules for magic and like the same world and universe and stuff. So as far as I am aware, he has not yet released the next, like the contemporary trilogy. I think he's working on the first book there. But he's released some side stories sort of in between. But this one, Mistborn, The Final Empire, is the one we'll be reading. This is quite a bit longer than The Last Wish. This book in total is 658 pages or 57 pages. So now here's the nice thing. Next week and the following week are holidays. So we have Christmas next Tuesday, and then we have New Year's Eve the following Tuesday. So we are actually going to be breaking for a couple of weeks. We're not going to have book club until the following week after New Year's Day. That's when we'll come back. So you'll have time to get the book and read the first assignment, which is going to be, because it's broken down into parts. I think it's broken down into 6 parts total.
So let's do the first two.
The first part is 168 pages long. So if we break it up into 4-ish like reading segments for, a month at a time. The first, what you need to read is up to, basically right up to part 2, which is called Rebels Beneath a Sky of Ash. You need to read up to that point. And in this particular version I have, not everyone's going to have the same edition, it is 168 pages. So read up to the end of part 1.
Cool.
And then we'll come back and be ready to discuss, not next week, not the week after, but the following week. Yes. Everybody got that? Any questions, let me know, and we'll answer them right now before we sign off.
Cool.
Aside from that,
I don't have.
Hope everyone has a great holiday season.
Yes, enjoy
Christmas. We'll probably still do podcasts, but we're not going to do the book club since they fall right on the holidays.
On the holiday, yeah.
Okay. Rob says, interesting contrast between the elf in this story and the elves in the previous one. Yeah, that was actually...
Yeah, the assimilated elves, yeah.
The ones that actually, have made the effort to cohabitate. Saint Boot says, Mistborn, awesome. Originally a trilogy of trilogies. Second series is a western with magic, 4 books, then a series in the 80s, and then a sci-fi series to finish it out. Restless Oblivion. I thought so too. The integrated elves versus the elves from the previous chapter. He says, the voice of reason inside your head tells you not to knowingly put yourself in danger, especially against insurmountable odds. Every other story in this book shows Geralt doing just that, sometimes for money, sometimes friendship, etc. The end of this story reveals that Geralt knows his destiny is a painful death, but he continues on and puts himself in harm's way despite it. That's a good point. Sorry, so second Witcher book we'll read in February or March? Okay, no, actually. So we're going to read Mistborn next, April. Which will be January. And then in February, we're actually going to read Crime and Punishment, a book that we talked about on the podcast on Sunday. Just because I'm fascinated by the concept of it, I really want to read it. Yeah. Then in, what would it be, March? March is going to be another vote. So after that, you guys will vote on the next book. And then after that, we will come back to Storm of Seasons, which is the only book in the 8 Witcher books I've not read yet. But chronologically, it's the next one. So we'll read Season of Storms. I think that's what it's called at that point. So that's the plan for now. Same to y'all. Was Yola's seizure based on her power or Geralt's unbelievable destiny? So she touches his hand, and she sort of sees his future. But there's like there's a really strong...
Does that happen every time she sees someone's future, where she goes into a seizure and bleeds from her mouth?
This has to do with the power that binds like Pavetta and like all of those characters in Sintra, that bloodline power that she can't control. Mm-hmm. So there's a very strong like fate that binds Geralt to those people. And so she is seeing some pretty intense stuff that is in relation to that, and that's what caused her to become overwhelmed by it.
Okay, cool.
Nice getting into some classic Russian lit. Yep. Crime and Punishment, one of my favorite books. Nice.
Very good.
I guess Yen is so attractive that even elves want her. Apparently male elves don't find humans attractive. Yeah, they didn't explain that super well. She has an allure about her.
It seemed like the guys around, or the guys that, like what's his name, that elf dude, were kind of under a spell of some sort.
Yeah. There's an allure there that's a little bit deeper than just natural attraction. And, sorceresses... There's actually a part later on in Blood of Elves where, like, Yen's been on the road for a while. She's sort of riding into a town. And she casts this spell over her that, like, all the dudes in the neighborhood are just like, whoa, they all take notice. So she definitely has powers that enhance her attractiveness. So... I'm sure something like that's going on.
The Last Wish. See, I asked Mike this right before the stream. What exactly was The Last Wish?
So, Go ahead.
Yeah, you explain it, Mike.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we don't know like the actual particular words he used.
Right.
All we know is that he was trying to save her from the djinn. In order to do that, he had to make a wish that would essentially like prevent the djinn from taking vengeance on her after he fulfilled the wish. So the wish was to bind their fates together in sort of a romantic sense, right? So it's like he wants to be with her romantically. So if that's the wish, then the djinn can't kill her, because in order to fulfill the wish, he has to be alive. So that was like Geralt's way of sort of saving her life. But it's more than just like, hey, I want her to fall in love with me, or like I want her to be my girlfriend or whatever. It's not quite that skin deep of a wish. It's like their fates are bound. Like their lives are bound to each other. It's like a really deep level kind of like romantic tie between them, if that makes sense. CT Blanco says, I think Geralt wished to be bound to Yen. Right. A djinn can't kill its master even though he wanted to kill Yen. He kills Yen, and if he kills Yen, Oh, so their lives could actually be bound. That's actually a good catch there. So he's like, if you kill Yennefer, I die too. So her fate and his fate are bound in the same way. That's actually it's pretty astute. That could definitely be part of it. Technically, their fates would be better if he killed them both.
But Rob, it couldn't kill its master anyway. But that is a good loophole. Anyways, Oblivion said something about Dandelion's voice being gone provides like an urgency that Geralt actually cares about him enough to, do whatever it takes to save him. Not just to save his life, but just to save his voice.
Yeah, right. Because he's a troubadour. He's a bard. He sings songs.
Yeah,
he needs his voice to make money, to make a living. Anyways, fellas.
Okay,
it's
guys.
been great. Thank you for joining us. We'll come back in 3 weeks for Mistborn. I'm looking forward to it. I've never read any Brandon Sanderson, so this will be my first.
Me neither. I'm excited.
My first chance to read him. He's a super famous author, so it'll be good to see what he's all about.
Yep.
Till then, you guys have a great week. Have a great Christmas and holiday season. Peace out.